Today, we're going to walk through 7 pretty powerful lessons for success. And we're going to do it by following the story of one young man who went from feeling completely stuck to finding the strength to build his own future.
So let's just kick things off with a really big question, one we all probably ask ourselves at some point. Is your destiny already written for you, or do you get to hold the pen? We're going to explore this whole idea through the eyes of a young student named Liu Bei. So our story starts with Liu Bei in high school. He comes from a poor family. His dad passed away when he was young, and he just feels totally trapped by it all. Like a magnificent eagle that's somehow stuck living in a chicken coop. One night, he gets home and sees his mother sewing away late into the night, just trying to scrape together every last penny she can for his university fees. And seeing that, he just breaks. He says to her, perhaps this is destiny. Maybe this is just how it's supposed to be for us. But his mother, she is not having it. She looks right at him and tells him a story that completely changes his perspective. She says, destiny is an eagle in a chicken coop. She tells him about an eagle's egg that accidentally falls into a chicken's nest. The eaglet hatches, it's raised by chickens, and it never ever realizes it was actually born to soar. And right there, that's our very first lesson. His mother's story was like a lightning bolt for Liu Bei. He suddenly got it. He wasn't a chicken defined by a small world. He was an eagle, and he had all this potential he hadn't even touched. This idea just lit a fire under him. He hit the books harder than ever and got into a really good university. So Liu Bei arrives at the Changjiang International Business Management University, knowing now that he's an eagle. But it turns out his real education, the lessons that would truly shape him, was only just getting started. Of course, there was a huge problem: money. How was he going to pay for all this? Well, in a pretty wild twist, his uncle, who'd always been kind of distant, just shows up and offers to pay for everything. When Liu Bei asks him why, his uncle just says, heaven helps those who help themselves. He saw how hard Liu Bei was working, and it inspired him to step in and help.
This whole idea really sticks with Liu Bei, and he thinks a lot about why it works. He kind of boils it down to 4 things. 1. When you really try hard, you command respect, even from the challenges you're facing. 2. People who are determined, they shine like fireflies in the dark. Other people just naturally want to help. 3. People see your drive. They believe you're gonna succeed, and they want to be a part of that journey. And finally, when you're grateful for that help, people are even more willing to give it. So this principle is guiding him, but his next lesson taught him where to point all that energy. At university, he has this amazing professor named Liu, who believed the goal wasn't just to get a diploma, but to gain vision. And this brings us to lesson 3. Your heart is where your treasure is. Professor Liu tells this great little story to explain it. You've got 2 friends walking together. One's an entomologist, a bug expert, and the other's a businessman. They're in a busy park, and the entomologist just stops. He heard the chirp of a super rare cricket that the businessman completely missed. Then later, they're on a noisy city street, and this time the businessman stops. He heard the tiny little clink of a coin hitting the pavement. The entomologist heard nothing. I mean, how powerful is that? The lesson is that what you notice, what you pull from the world, it all comes down to what your heart is focused on. Professor Liu says your passion, your heart, is like a magnet. It pulls the specific things you're looking for, whether it's knowledge or opportunities, right out of all the noise of everyday life. Now, things weren't always easy. In his early days at university, Liu Bei was pretty angry and felt like an outsider, convinced the other students were looking down at him. It led to a few fights, a trip to the administrator's office, and another fateful meeting with Professor Liu. And that's where he learned lesson number 4. Professor Liu told him this story. A lonely dog walks into a room that's lined with mirrors. It sees hundreds of other dogs looking back at it. And what does it do? It growls. And of course, all the reflections growl right back. It starts barking aggressively, and so do the reflections. The dog just gets more and more frantic, fighting its own image until it collapses from exhaustion, completely surrounded by the hostility that it created. The message was crystal clear. The world just reflects back whatever attitude you're putting out there. So Professor Liu gave Liu Bei this 5-step secret recipe. Super practical stuff. Practice smiling, say hi to people, help them out, be tolerant, and really believe that when you're good to others, you're being good to yourself. And you know what? It worked. This simple advice totally transformed Liu Bei from an outcast into a respected leader. All right, let's fast forward a bit. We're in Liu Bei's final year now. He's figured out who he is, He's learned how to connect with people. But now comes the scary part, leaving the nest and making it in the real world.
And who's there with another perfect metaphor? Professor Liu, of course. This is lesson 5. He tells Liu Bei that university was like the eggshell, protecting and nurturing him. But now the eaglet is fully formed, and to actually fly, it has to find the strength to break through that shell on its own. The real test was about to begin.
But breaking out is, well, it's hard. Liu Bei is sending out hundreds of job applications and getting nothing back. He's feeling totally defeated. One day, he's just sitting there and he sees this little boy in a sandbox trying with all his might to move a big stone. The kid pushes and pulls and grunts and finally just gives up and starts to cry. This is a huge moment. Liu Bei goes over to the boy and asks him why he's crying. The kid sobs, "I used all my strength." And Liu Bei looks at him kindly and says, "No, you didn't. You didn't ask me for help." And wow, that was a massive realization. Using all of your strength also means using all of your resources, and that includes asking other people for help. So with this new idea of what strength really means, Liu Bei still had one last hurdle to clear, his own anxiety about the future. And this final crucial lesson didn't come from a professor. It came from his best friends, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei. For lesson 7, his friend Zhang Fei does this brilliant little demonstration. He gets 2 glasses of water. One is full of muddy water, that's your mind when it's full of negative thoughts, worries, and doubts. The other glass is full of crystal clear water. That's your mind filled with positive, empowering thoughts. So the big question is, how do you get the mud out?
And the solution is just genius. You don't try to filter the mud out. You don't wait for it to settle at the bottom. Instead, you just keep pouring the clear water in. The fresh, clear water constantly pushes the muddy water out, over the top, until the entire glass is sparkling clean. The lesson? You don't fight negativity. You just consistently flush it out with a constant flow of positivity.
Zhang Fei then writes this down for Liu Bei, and it's the perfect summary of the whole idea. It's not about never having doubts. It's about choosing again and again to be passionate and positive, and letting that attitude wash the doubt away. So let's put it all together. From his mother, he learned he was an eagle. From his uncle, he learned that putting in the work attracts support. Professor Liu taught him to focus his heart, that the world is a mirror and that you have to break your own shell. A little boy taught him the true meaning of strength, and his friends showed him how to keep his mind clear. These 7 lessons literally became the bedrock of his future. And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. If your attitude really does shape everything, what you see, what you attract, who helps you, then maybe the most important question you can ever ask yourself is this one. What is your attitude deciding for you right now?